Something has been loosening. You may not have the precise words for it yet, but you have felt it in the way that certainties you once held without question have begun to feel less certain, in the way that structures you once navigated without thinking, the rhythms of your daily life, the assumptions about how things work, the unspoken agreements that defined what was possible and what was not, have begun to feel less solid than they did. Not frightening exactly, or not only frightening. There is something else mixed in with whatever disorientation the loosening produces, something that feels, underneath the uncertainty, almost like relief, like a pressure you had been living under for so long that you stopped noticing it as pressure has begun, incrementally and unmistakably, to ease. You have been noticing things you did not notice before, patterns in the information you are given that suggest the information has been managed, gaps between what you are told and what you directly experience, a growing inability to maintain the suspension of disbelief that ordinary life has always required, the willingness to not look too closely, to accept the surface because looking beneath it was too costly or too destabilizing or simply too exhausting. Something in you has stopped being willing to not look. And something in the world around you has begun to confirm that what you suspected when you looked was not paranoia and was not imagination. We are the Arcturian Council. And we have come through this transmission today to tell you something precise and important. The force that has been controlling your reality. The system of invisible influence that has shaped what you believe is possible, what you believe you deserve, what you believe about the nature of power and freedom, and your own capacity to determine the course of your life, is losing its grip. Not metaphorically, not eventually. Now, in this specific window of time, in this specific configuration of energetic and material conditions, the mechanisms of control that have operated on your species for longer than your recorded history are undergoing a structural failure that cannot be reversed. And what comes next, what is already beginning to emerge in the space that the loosening grip is creating, is what we have come to tell you about today. Stay with us, because understanding what is happening, with the precision and the clarity that transforms fear into informed navigation, is one of the most important things available to you in this moment. We are the Arcturian Council, a collective of ninth-dimensional beings from the Arcturian star system, whose primary function, in relationship to your planet, is the transmission of precisely calibrated information to support the consciousness evolution that is currently underway on Earth. We do not deal in generalities. We do not offer comfort that is not grounded in accuracy. When we say something is happening, we say it because our capacity to perceive the energetic and informational architecture of your reality allows us to see what is occurring at levels that your current instruments cannot directly measure, but that your direct experience consistently confirms. We tell you this because what we are about to share in this transmission requires a quality of trust that is not blind faith. It is trust based on the consistent correspondence between what we have transmitted and what you have subsequently experienced as real. We ask you to bring that quality of discernment to what follows. Here is what is at stake in this transmission. The force we are describing, the system of control that is losing its grip on your reality, is not a single entity, not a single institution, not a single conspiracy that can be named and located and opposed. It is a field, and an energetic architecture that is operated through human consciousness by shaping the fundamental assumptions through which human beings perceive themselves and their world. Assumptions about scarcity, about hierarchy, about the distribution of power, about what human beings are capable of and what they are not, about the nature of reality itself. This field has been the invisible operating system of your civilization for millennia. It has not required enforcement in the conventional sense, because it operated at the level of perception itself, shaping not just what people believed, but the framework within which belief was possible. The most effective control is the control that the controlled do not recognize as control, because it has become indistinguishable from reality. That indistinguishability is ending. The frequency shifts that are moving through your planet, the increases in photonic light, the activations of the crystalline grid, the systematic elevation of the vibrational rate of the Earth herself, are acting on this control field the way increased light acts on a space that has been kept artificially dark. The mechanisms that depended on the darkness to remain invisible are becoming visible. And visibility is, for a control system of this nature, the beginning of its end. By the end of this transmission, you will understand precisely how this control field has operated, what it has used, what it has targeted, what its specific mechanisms have been. You will understand what structural failure looks like from the inside, which is exactly what you are living through right now. And you will understand what the Arcturian Council can see forming in the space that the loosening grip is creating, the specific shape of what comes next. This is information that changes how you move through the days ahead. To understand why the control field is losing its grip, you first need to understand precisely how it has maintained its grip. Because the mechanisms are specific, and recognizing them in your own experience is one of the most immediately liberating things available to you. The control field is operated through 4 primary mechanisms. We will describe each with precision. The first mechanism is the management of the frequency of the collective field. Your reality is not, at its most fundamental level, a fixed physical structure that exists independently of the consciousness that perceives it. It is a dynamic, frequency-dependent co-creation, a field of potentiality that collapses into specific experienced reality based on the dominant frequencies of consciousness interacting with it. This is not speculation. It is the direction that your most advanced physics has been pointing for a century. The observer effect, the participatory nature of quantum reality, the growing evidence that consciousness is not a product of matter, but a fundamental feature of reality that matter emerges from. The control field has always known this. And its primary strategy has been to maintain the dominant frequency of human collective consciousness below the threshold at which human beings naturally access their creative power, their perceptual clarity, and their capacity for genuine sovereignty. How? Through the systematic cultivation of the frequency states that produce contraction, fear, scarcity, powerlessness, chronic low-grade stress, the persistent background hum of not enough that has been the ambient emotional environment of modern human life. These are not accidental features of your civilization. They are the energetic output that the control field requires to maintain its operational environment. A human being in a state of chronic fear and scarcity does not access the creative potential of the higher mind, does not question the fundamental assumptions of the system they are embedded in, does not perceive their own sovereignty as real. They manage, they comply. They consume what is offered to manage the discomfort of the frequencies they are being held in. This is the first mechanism, and it is the one that the incoming light frequencies are most directly disrupting, because photonic light, at the intensities now moving through your planetary field, elevates the frequency of every system it moves through, including human consciousness, including yours. The second mechanism is the colonization of the narrative. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. You do not experience raw reality. You experience interpreted reality, story-shaped reality, reality filtered through the narratives that tell you what things mean and why they are the way they are, and what is possible and what is not. The control field understood this and invested over centuries in the ownership of the narrative infrastructure, the institutions, the media, the educational systems, the cultural forms through which the stories that shape human perception are generated and distributed, not through crude censorship alone, through something far more efficient. The shaping of the questions that could be asked, the framing of the choices that could be considered, the definition of what counted as credible and what counted as fringe. You have been living inside a narrative architecture that was designed not to inform you, but to manage you. To keep the range of the possible in your own life and in the collective within boundaries that serve the maintenance of the existing order. This mechanism is also failing. The decentralization of information. The technologies that have made it possible for individuals to share direct experience and direct investigation outside the managed narrative channels has created fractures in the narrative architecture that cannot be repaired. The stories are no longer holding. Not because people have suddenly become more intelligent or more discerning, but because the gap between the official narrative and direct lived experience has widened beyond the point where the cognitive dissonance required to maintain belief in the narrative is sustainable for a growing proportion of the population. The third mechanism is the suppression of human energetic capacity. The human being is, in its fully activated state, a being of extraordinary energetic capability. It's capable of healing, of perception beyond the five senses, of connection with dimensions of reality that the control field requires to remain inaccessible. The systematic suppression of these capacities has been achieved through multiple channels. The medical and cultural pathologizing of non-ordinary experience, the educational emphasis on the rational material worldview at the exclusion of all other modes of knowing, the chemical and electromagnetic environment of modern life that chronically suppresses the pineal gland and the coherence of the heart field, and the social ridicule mechanisms that discourage the exploration of capacities that fall outside the officially sanctioned range of human possibility. The awakening community, which includes everyone receiving this transmission, represents the leading edge of the population in which these suppressed capacities are reactivating. And that reactivation is not incidental to the loosening of the control field's grip. It is one of its primary drivers. The fourth mechanism is the manufactured disconnection from the Earth field. Your planet generates a coherent electromagnetic field. The Schumann resonance and the broader geomagnetic field. That is the natural grounding and calibration environment for human consciousness. Contact with this field, in its natural state, produces measurable increases in coherence, in immune function, in emotional regulation, in perceptual clarity. It is the frequency baseline within which human beings evolved and within which human consciousness functions at its most capable. The control field has progressively severed this connection through the built environments that keep human beings physically separated from the Earth's surface, through the artificial electromagnetic environments of modern technology that overlay the natural field with competing signals, through the pace and structure of modern life that leaves no space for the quality of stillness in which the Earth's field can be genuinely received. This severing is not accidental. A human being in genuine resonance with the Earth's field is a grounded, coherent, sovereign human being. That is not what the control field requires. These four mechanisms have operated as an integrated system, each reinforcing the others, each dependent on the others for its effectiveness. And the structural failure that is now underway is affecting all four simultaneously. Not because any single intervention has targeted them, but because the fundamental energetic conditions that they all required, the low-frequency collective field, the narrative monopoly, the suppression of human capacity, the disconnection from the Earth, are all being disrupted by the same underlying cause. We want to tell you precisely what that cause is. The cause of the control field's structural failure is not a political movement, not a technological disruption, not a coordinated human effort, though all of these are expressions of it at the material level. The cause is a fundamental shift in the energetic conditions of your sector of the galaxy. Your solar system is moving through a region of the galaxy that carries a significantly higher density of photonic light than the region you have been traversing for the past several thousand years. This is a cyclical phenomenon. Your galaxy rotates, your solar system moves through different regions of the galactic field, and the energetic conditions within which your planet and your species evolve change accordingly. The periods of darkness in your history, the long eras of widespread unconsciousness, of the control mechanisms operating without significant disruption, corresponded to the passage through regions of the galactic field with lower photonic light density. You are now entering the higher density region. The photonic light, now moving through your solar system and your planet in increasing intensity, is not simply electromagnetic radiation in a conventional sense. It carries information, specific, structured, evolutionary information encoded in the fabric of the galactic field by intelligences operating at scales of organization that make your most advanced civilizations look like early experiments. This information is not directed at individual consciousness. It is a systemic upgrade to the entire frequency environment within which consciousness in your sector of the galaxy operates. What this means in practical terms, the frequency floor of your collective consciousness is rising. Not because of individual awakening work alone, though that work is real and important and cumulative, but because the energetic substrate within which consciousness operates is being systematically elevated. The baseline is rising, and the control field, which depended on maintaining that baseline below a specific threshold, cannot maintain its operational parameters in the new energetic environment. This is structural. It is not reversible. The galactic cycle does not respond to the preferences of those who benefited from the previous conditions. There is a second cause operating at the planetary level. The Earth herself is activating. Your planet is a conscious being, not in the metaphorical sense of an entity that resembles human consciousness, but in the specific sense of a living system with its own evolutionary arc, its own intelligence, its own relationship to the galactic field. And the Earth is in the process of a frequency upgrade that is independent of and simultaneous with the galactic photonic increase. The activation of what your various traditions describe as the crystalline grid, the energetic matrix that underlies the physical geography of your planet, is producing a systematic increase in the coherence and the frequency of the Earth's own field. The planetary field is becoming more coherent, more clear, more capable of supporting the higher frequency states of consciousness that the control field has been working to prevent from becoming stable and widespread. The Earth is reclaiming her frequency sovereignty, and in doing so, she is reclaiming it for every living system that exists within her field, including you. The structural failure of the control field is therefore not a question of if. The energetic conditions that sustained it are no longer present and will not return. The question, the only question that remains, is what the transition from the old system to the new looks like from the inside. Because transitions of this magnitude, even when they move in the direction of liberation, are not always comfortable. And understanding what you are moving through, with the precision that allows you to navigate rather than simply endure, is exactly what we are here to provide. You are living through the transition right now, and it is producing a specific set of experiences that, without the framework we are offering, can be deeply disorienting. Here are the 7 primary signs that you are living inside the structural failure of the control field, not as distant observer, but as an embodied participant in real time. Sign 1, the collapse of previous certainties, things you once knew, about how institutions work, about the reliability of official information, about the basic trustworthiness of the systems that structure daily life, no longer hold with the same weight they once did. This is not cynicism. It is the direct perceptual result of the narrative mechanism failing. The stories that maintain the appearance of coherence and legitimacy are losing their cohesion. And the mind, trained to depend on those stories for its orientation, experiences their dissolution as disorientation. Sign 2, time acceleration. The subjective experience of time moving faster, of weeks and months passing with a compression that feels qualitatively different from previous experience. This is the direct perceptual correlate of frequency increase. Higher frequency states process more information per unit of time, which means that as the frequency of your consciousness rises with the rising baseline, the same objective period of time contains more experiential content. More happens, more changes, more is processed, and the subjective experience is of time accelerating. Sign 3. The sudden irrelevance of what was previously consuming. Things that once occupied significant portions of your attention and energy. Concerns, ambitions, relationships, habits that suddenly feel hollow or beside the point. Not through loss of interest exactly, but through a kind of perceptual shift in which what once felt central now feels peripheral. This is the frequency shift revealing the difference between what genuinely matters and what the control field's management of your attention had made to seem like it mattered. Sign 4. Physical symptoms without medical explanation. Fatigue that sleep does not resolve. Unusual sensations in the body. Pressure in the head, tingling in the extremities. Disrupted sleep patterns. Digestive irregularities. Heightened sensitivity to food, to environments, to the emotional states of others. These are the physical correlates of the frequency upgrade moving through the biological system. The body adjusting, at the cellular level, to operating in a higher frequency energetic environment than it was built for in its current configuration. The adjustment is real, the discomfort is real, and it is temporary. Sign 5. The breakdown of tolerance for inauthenticity. A growing inability to maintain performances, social, professional, relational, that require the suppression of what is actually true for you. A reduced threshold for the kind of interactions in which everyone present is performing a version of themselves that is managed rather than genuine. A pull toward directness, toward honesty, toward the dropping of the social masks that the previous low-frequency environment made necessary and normal. This is the sovereign human being reasserting itself as the control field's suppression of authentic expression weakens. Sign 6. Synchronicities increasing in frequency and precision. The meaningful coincidences, the book that arrives at exactly the right moment, the conversation that addresses exactly the question you were carrying. The sequence of events that could not have been planned, but that moves your life in exactly the direction your deeper knowing was pointing, are increasing. This is not imagination. It is the direct result of your consciousness rising into the frequency range where the co-creative interaction between inner state and outer reality becomes more immediate and more visible. The higher the frequency, the shorter the lag between intention and manifestation. You are beginning to see this in real time. Sign 7. A growing sense of individual and collective purpose. An increasing clarity, arriving not as an intellectual conclusion but as a felt knowing that you are here for a reason, that this moment in history is not an accident, that your presence in this particular body, in this particular lifetime, at this particular intersection of planetary and galactic transition, was chosen by you. For reasons that are becoming clearer as the frequency rises and the control field's suppression of that clarity weakens. This is not grandiosity. It is the natural recovery of a knowing that the control field specifically targeted for suppression, because a human being who knows why they are here and what they are capable of is a human being who is very difficult to control. We want to tell you what we see from our position, what is forming in the space that the loosening grip is creating. Because the transition from the old system to what comes next is not a vacuum. It is not simply the removal of what was. It is the emergence of what has always been possible, but has been systematically prevented from becoming stable. What we see forming operates at 3 levels. At the level of consciousness, a stabilizing new baseline. The frequency rise is not a temporary spike. It is a permanent elevation of the floor, the minimum vibrational rate below which human consciousness in the new energetic environment simply cannot be consistently held. This means that the control field's primary mechanism, the maintenance of collective consciousness below the threshold of sovereign perception, is not just currently failing, it is failing permanently. The new baseline makes the old suppression energetically impossible to sustain over time. What this produces, as it stabilizes, is a population of human beings with a qualitatively different relationship to their own perception, more direct, less mediated by managed narrative, more capable of reading the field of reality without the filters that the old system installed. This is not the utopian projection. It is the logical consequence of a permanent frequency floor elevation that your own science will eventually map and measure. At the level of systems, the emergence of new organizational forms. The systems of the old paradigm, the hierarchical, extractive, scarcity-based organizational structures that have characterized human civilization for millennia, are not simply being reformed. They are being replaced by organizational forms that are native to higher frequency consciousness, decentralized, collaborative, based on genuine mutual benefit rather than the management of power differentials, based on the recognition of abundance rather than the enforcement of scarcity. These new forms are already emerging. They are not yet dominant. The transition is in its early phases, and the old structures still hold significant momentum. But the direction is clear, and the trajectory is irreversible. The energetic conditions that sustained the old forms are dissolving. The energetic conditions that support the new forms are increasing. What is native to the new frequency will stabilize. What requires the old frequency to function will not. At the level of the individual, the recovery of sovereign consciousness. This is what we most want to emphasize, because it is the level at which you have the most direct participation right now. The recovery of sovereign consciousness is not a collective achievement that arrives as an external event. It is an individual process that happens one human being at a time, in the interior of each person who does the work of recognizing and releasing the control field's installed programming. The programming we are speaking of is specific. The beliefs, installed through the mechanisms we described, that you are small, that you are limited, that your perception cannot be trusted, that the range of what is possible in your life is determined by forces outside yourself, that the genuine exercise of your creative power and your sovereign will is somehow presumptuous or dangerous or beyond your reach. These beliefs are not true. They have never been true. But they have been installed with a sophistication and a consistency that makes distinguishing them from genuine self-knowledge one of the most important and most challenging tasks of the awakening process. The control field is losing its grip externally. The work of the awakening individual is to complete the process internally, to do the deliberate, sustained work of identifying and releasing the programming that the external field installed, so that the sovereign consciousness that is your actual nature can stabilize in the space the released programming leaves behind. This is precisely what the Arcturian Council practices we are about to share are designed to support. They are not generic spiritual practices. They are specifically calibrated to the specific mechanisms of the control field we have described, designed to work directly on the installed programming in each of the 4 areas where the control field is operated. We will share them now. Practice 1. The frequency audit. Once daily, ideally in the morning before full engagement with the external world, take 3 minutes to assess your current frequency state. Not with analysis, with direct inner perception. Simply bring your attention fully inward and ask, what is the dominant quality of my inner environment right now? Is it expansive or contracted? Is it clear or murky? Does it feel more like freedom or more like weight? You are not looking for a particular answer. You are building the habit of self-perception that is the foundation of sovereign consciousness. The capacity to read your own interior state accurately and to distinguish between what is genuinely yours and what has been induced by the environment you have been moving through. The control field's first mechanism was the management of the collective frequency field. Your daily frequency audit is the practice that makes you a conscious participant in your own frequency, rather than a passive subject of the ambient field. It does not require changing what you find. It requires simply and honestly seeing it. Practice 2. The narrative sovereignty check. When you encounter information, news, opinion, analysis, the stories that the world around you is telling about what is happening and why, pause before accepting or rejecting. Ask 3 questions. First, who benefits from this framing? Not as a reflexive rejection of all information, but as a genuine inquiry into the interests that shape any narrative. Second, what does my direct experience tell me about this? Not what I have been told to expect or fear, but what I have actually directly observed. Third, what does this framing make impossible to consider? The most effective narrative management is not what it includes, but what it excludes from the range of the thinkable. These 3 questions, applied consistently, build what we describe as narrative sovereignty, the capacity to engage with information without being managed by it. To receive data without surrendering the interpretive function to whoever generated the data. Practice 3. The capacity reclamation. Each week, deliberately engage with one of the suppressed human capacities that the control field has invested in keeping dormant. This does not require elaborate practice or special conditions. It requires deliberate attention. The capacity of the body to communicate directly, paying genuine attention to physical sensation as information rather than as inconvenience. The capacity of the heart field to perceive emotional truth in an environment or a relationship before the mind has processed it. Honoring the immediate heart-level knowing rather than overriding it with rationalization. The capacity of intuition to navigate, following the inner knowing that has no logical basis but that consistently proves more accurate than purely analytical decision-making when attended to honestly. Each deliberate engagement with these capacities builds the neural and energetic pathways through which they operate. Each time you honor what your body knows, what your heart perceives, what your intuition navigates, you are reclaiming territory from the suppression mechanism. You are recovering what is yours. Practice 4. The Earth Reconnection. Once daily, even briefly, even for 5 minutes, make deliberate physical contact with the natural world. Bare feet on ground. Hands on the bark of a tree, sitting with your back against something that grows. 5 minutes of genuine attention to the natural environment without the mediation of a screen or a device, or the continuous internal commentary of a mind engaged with its own concerns. This is not romantic. It is practical. The Earth's coherent electromagnetic field is the natural calibration environment for human consciousness. Regular, deliberate contact with it directly counteracts the 4th mechanism of the control field. The manufactured disconnection that keeps human beings operating in artificial electromagnetic environments that chronically degrade the coherence of the heart field and the pineal gland's function. The reconnection does not require wilderness. It requires presence. The quality of attention you bring to 5 minutes of genuine contact with the living earth produces measurable effects on heart rate variability, on cortisol levels, on the coherence of the electromagnetic field generated by your own biology. Your science has measured this. We are simply telling you to use it deliberately. Practice 5. The Sovereignty Declaration. This practice works directly on the installed programming we described. The beliefs about smallness, limitation, and the externality of power that the control field has invested in maintaining as the operating assumptions of individual human consciousness. Once daily, written in a journal, spoken aloud, or held with full conscious intention in the interior, affirm the following, or your own version of it, with as much genuine felt sense as you can bring to the words. I am a sovereign being. My perception is reliable. My creative power is real. The range of what is possible in my life is not determined by the systems I am embedded in, but by the frequency I choose to inhabit and the intention I choose to direct. I withdraw my energetic participation from every system that depends on my belief in my own limitation, and I invest that energy in the reality I am here to build. The felt sense is the key. This is not affirmation as performance. It is the deliberate, conscious use of your attention and your intention to restructure the field of your own belief, to install, through consistent repetition with genuine feeling, a different operating assumption than the one the control field provided. It works, not immediately, not dramatically, cumulatively, consistently, over weeks and months of daily practice. The field of your own consciousness is responsive to this kind of deliberate cultivation. This is one of the things the control field most needed you not to know. Before we continue to the final section of this transmission, pause here. If what the Arcturian Council has shared has landed as accurate, if you recognized your experience in the 7 signs of living through structural failure, if the description of the 4 control mechanisms names something you have been perceiving without having a precise framework for it, we ask you to do something right now. Scroll to the comments and leave one sentence. Tell us, which of the 7 signs is most alive in your experience right now? The collapse of previous certainties, the time acceleration, the growing sense of purpose? Name it, specifically, honestly, without the performance of certainty you do not yet have. Because the community that forms in this channel around this kind of honest, grounded sharing is itself a counterfield to the isolation that the control field has always relied on. Human beings who recognize each other, who share genuine perception and genuine experience, who build a collective field of clarity in the middle of the disorientation of transition. These communities are among the most important things forming in this period. Your comment is your contribution to that field. If this transmission is serving you, like this video right now. The algorithm evaluates each video in its first hours based on the engagement of exactly the kind of people this is made for. Your like, in the first hours after you watch, directly determines how many other people who are in the middle of this transition and who need exactly this framework will be shown it. Subscribe if you are not yet part of this community. Activate the notification bell. The Arcturian Council transmissions that follow this one go deeper into the specific nature of what is forming, into the timeline of the transition, into the practices for navigating the specific challenges of each phase. You will want to be here for all of it. Something has been loosening. You felt it before you had words for it. The certainties softening. The structures feeling less solid. The gap between the official story and direct experience widening past the point where maintaining belief in the official story was no longer worth the cognitive cost. Now you have the framework. What you have been feeling is the structural failure of a control field that has operated on your species for longer than your recorded history. A system of invisible influence that maintained itself through the management of collective frequency, the colonization of narrative, the suppression of human energetic capacity, and the manufactured disconnection from the coherence of the earth field. That system is losing its grip, not because of any single human effort, though human effort matters, because the fundamental energetic conditions of your sector of the galaxy have changed, because your planet has entered a region of higher photonic light density, because the Earth herself is activating and reclaiming her frequency sovereignty, because the baseline of collective human consciousness is rising past the threshold below which the control mechanisms could operate effectively. This is structural. It is not reversible. What comes next is not a simple transition. The old system does not release its grip without turbulence. The structures built on the old energetic conditions do not dissolve quietly. The programming installed in individual and collective consciousness does not clear without the deliberate work of clearing it. But the direction is established. The energetic conditions that sustain the old system are ending. The energetic conditions that support what has always been possible for your species, the sovereign, connected, creative, fully capacitated human being operating in genuine partnership with the living field of the Earth and the larger galactic community, are growing. You are not watching this from a distance. You are in it, living it, navigating the specific, daily, sometimes disorienting experience of being a conscious human being in the middle of the largest transition your species has ever moved through. The Arcturian Council sees you in this. We see the effort it requires to maintain clarity in a field of increasing noise. We see the courage it takes to trust direct perception in an environment that has systematically trained you to distrust it. We see the genuine achievement of every day that you choose sovereign navigation over the comfort of the managed narrative. And we tell you, from the position of beings who can see the full arc of what is underway, what is coming into the space that the loosening grip is creating is worth every moment of the disorientation the transition requires. Keep navigating, keep perceiving, keep building, in your own consciousness, in your own life, in the communities of clarity you form with others who are doing the same work. The reality that the control field needed you to believe was impossible. It is not impossible. It is what comes next. We are the Arcturian Council. We are with you in this, every step of the way. Before you close this transmission, one practice: sit for a moment. Bring your attention fully into your body. Feel the weight of it, the aliveness of it, the extraordinary fact of being a conscious being in a physical form at this specific moment in the history of your planet. Take one breath, let it be deliberate, and say, to yourself, to your own sovereign consciousness, to the Arcturian Council whose frequency has been present in this transmission: I see what is happening. I trust my perception. I am not a passive subject of this transition. I am a conscious participant in it. And I choose, today, to inhabit the frequency of what I know to be true, rather than the frequency of the fear that the old system requires. Let that settle. Feel the quality of it in the body, the subtle but unmistakable difference between the contracted frequency of managed fear and the expanded frequency of sovereign knowing. Now, 4 things before you go. First, stay until the very end of this transmission if you have not already. The final sections carry the most practically applicable content, and the frequency component of this Arcturian transmission is cumulative. Every minute you remain in contact with it advances the integration of what has been delivered. Watch it to completion. And if something pulls you back to watch it again, trust that impulse. Second, like this video right now, before you do anything else, this is not a request for social validation. It is a request for energetic participation in the distribution of a transmission that is reaching exactly the people who are ready for it. The algorithm responds to likes in the first hours after publication. Your like, right now, directly determines whether the next awakening soul who is disoriented by the structural failure of the control field and searching for a precise framework to understand there. Experience will find this transmission or not. Your click matters more than you know. Third, subscribe and activate the notification bell. The Arcturian Council transmissions that follow this one are already in preparation, going deeper into the specific timeline of what is coming, into the advanced practices for navigating the transition phases that lie ahead, into the Arcturian perspective on the specific challenges and specific opportunities of this window of time. These are transmissions you will not want to miss. Be here when they arrive. Fourth, leave a comment right now. Which of the 7 signs are you living most intensely right now? The collapse of certainties? The time acceleration? The growing sense of purpose that keeps arriving even when the outer circumstances don't seem to support it? Tell this community. Tell the Arcturian Council. Name what is true for you in this moment, because named truth, shared honestly in a community of people doing the same work, creates a counterfield of clarity in the middle of transition that benefits everyone who inhabits it. We are the Arcturian Council. The grip is loosening. What comes next is real. And you, navigating this with the courage and the clarity that you bring, are exactly where you are supposed to be. Until the next transmission, we are with you.